Hey Bookish Babes, and welcome to my book nook. Those that are new here, the name's Rainy. I'm an elementary music teacher. I'm also a booktube extraordinaire. So if you like talking about books, all that jazz, like, subscribe, share, all of the things. Disclaimer, I'm insanely sick as I'm filming this, but I didn't want to miss a week. So you're welcome. Anyway, we're going to dive in. If I have to stop to take coughing breaks, of course you won't see that, but it's probably going to happen because I feel like death. And it's the worst time to feel like death because my spring musical concert is this week. Like, spring musical that I'm in charge of is this week, and I feel like death. It'll be okay. We're going to make it. So I was heavily inspired by my favorite booktuber in the world, Kayla, Books and Lala, to do this quarterly favorites and stats review. And so that's what we're going to be doing. So in this video, I'm going to be going over my stats for quarter one for books read and all of that sort of stuff. And then I'll be sharing my top 5 favorite books of the quarter with you, my least 5 favorites of the quarter, and then 5 books that I really hope that I get to in quarter 2, because I think that'll be kind of fun. And so, yeah. Let's dive into the stats first, and then we'll talk about favorites, least favorites, and wannabes. So I pulled up my laptop so that I make sure I share all of the stats that I want to share, so here we go. All right, let's start with books read per month. In January, it was my highest month. I read 12 books. In February, I read 8 books, and in March, I read 11 books. So not too bad. February was definitely a busier month for me, although I did read chunkier books in February. And then as far as the page counts go, in January, I read 3,567 pages, whereas in February, I read almost the same, because like I said, I read chunky books, with 3,065 pages read, and then in March, 3,620. So I'm always hitting about that 3,500 range, which altogether, that is, give a girl a second to calculate, 10,252 pages. Look at me, I can do math. All right, then after that, we had DNFs. I only DNF'd 2 books this year so far. Well, technically 3, but 1 is in April, so you'll hear about that in quarter 2. And I DNF'd 2 books in January. As far as audiobooks, because I really do love listening to audiobooks and reading the physical book at the same time, I listened to 66 hours of audio in January, 27, more like 28 in February, and about 22 in March. The reason it's gotten lower is because the books that I'm picking, the audiobooks are on hold for like 10 to 12 weeks at a time, and I never get it by the time I need to read it, and so I'll just read it. I honestly didn't even realize until I started doing audiobooks that like the world of audiobooks is so amazing. So of course I'm wishing I could listen to these books via audio, but if it's not available, I'm just gonna read it physically, because like that's all I really ever knew before this year anyway. And let's dive into genres for this quarter. So as far as for this quarter alone, the most that I read was 10 thriller and horror novels, 5 fantasy, 5 romance, 2 general fiction, 3 historical fiction, and then 3 novellas / manga, which, yeah, I could have distributed them. Oh, and 3 mystery. I could have distributed them differently, but this is how I chose to do it. So thriller and horror is definitely still my favorite to read, hence why it's that. However, I found a newfound love for fantasy. I hadn't really read fantasy before this year, and so that's exciting, and it's tied with my second one for romance. So, fun stuff. We have my star ratings, which, let's go backwards. I DNF'd 2. I didn't have any 1 stars. That's awesome. I had 1 2-star. I had 4 3 stars. I had 9 4 stars / 4.5 stars. I probably should have like broken that down. And then I had 17 5 stars. 17. I'm telling you, I am picking fantastic books this year. That's over half of what I've read, because I read 31 books in total for this quarter. I'm so happy with this. Honestly, when I was making this chart, I was just so excited. I am just reading spectacular books, and you are going to hear all about them very soon. And then as far as author status, I had 24 new to me authors that I had not read books from before, and 7 repeat authors. So that is super awesome. I will say, as far as nationality-wise, I didn't make a pie chart for this, but I need to definitely be reading more books from people of color, because the most that I've read from is people of white, background, and I want to make sure that I'm doing a better job at reading more persons of color. So that is a goal that I'm setting for myself in the second quarter of this year. I also probably need to check in with my goals from the beginning of the year and see if I'm actually on track with any of those. So I'll probably do that in a later video, but for we're just going to focus on these. So those are the stats that I have for the quarter, and now we're gonna dive into my 5 favorites of the quarter. These are 11 of the 17 5 stars that I had. So I'll give you a list of the 5 the 17 5-stars that I had. The other 7 that are missing, I let my mom borrow because my mom likes to borrow all of my books. And so this is all. Also, yes, I am in my jammies and I don't even care. Like I said, I'm feeling like death here. So the 17 5-stars that I read were Near the Bone by Christina Henry, Every Heart a Doorway by Shauna McGuire, Twilight by Stephanie Meyer, yes, that was a reread, Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, Jade City by Fonda Lee, It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey, Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover, Finlay Donovan Knocks Him Dead by Elle Cosimano, Crescent City, the first one, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, Bunny by Mona Awad, Tender is the Flesh by Augustina Bosderica, and Every Morning the Way Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman, The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood, People We Meet on Vacation by Emily Henry, The Push by Ashley Audrain, In My Dreams I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, and Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. And so now, let's see which of these 5 are my favorites. So my son is in the room with me, watching something on my phone. So honestly, if you hear him, we're just going to deal with it because that is mom life when you're trying to film. Okay, I'm not going to put these in any simplest of order because I don't want you to know which one is like my favorite ever because like I already know what might end up being my favorite of the year, but we'll see. So we're going to start with Jade City by Fonda Lee. This is the first book in the Greenbone Saga series by Fonda Lee. Like I said, the Greenbone Saga trilogy. You obviously know that I love this book because I've talked about it before. I also did a 5-minute or less book review on this, and this was the first one I chose. I love this book and I love this series. It is fantastic. So I'm not going to say a lot about it because I've talked about it a million times before. But basically, Jade is the lifeblood of the island of Kakon. It's been mined, traded, stolen, and killed for centuries. Honorable Greenbone warriors like the Call family have used it to enhance their magical abilities and defend the island from foreign invasion. Now the war is over, and a new generation of Calls vie for control of Kakon's bustling capital city. When a powerful new drug emerges that lets anyone, even foreigners, wield Jade, the tension between the Calls and the rival Ite family erupts into open violence. And so basically, this drug comes in that allows anybody to wear Jade, people besides Greenbone warriors, and of course that's got to be stopped. And one clan is like, no, let's do this for money. And the other clan's like, no, that's not okay, that's wrong. And so you follow the Call family in this. The family dynamics are beautiful. I love this book so much. It is fantastic. It is my favorite thing ever. I am so happy that I read it. And it is definitely, I mean, obviously, I'm going to share only 5-star reads for my favorites. This is a contender. And it's one of my first really giant intros into the fantasy world. Like, this was actually a lot of world building, but it wasn't too much that, like, I wasn't interested in it. So, definitely pick it up. 5-star book that I read that was one of my favorites, which was the first one that I fully annotated. I love feeling that. Is the first Crescent City, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas, which I read in February. The Jade City one was in January, was my favorite in January. This was my favorite in February. And I loved this book. I loved it so much. So, this one is about Bryce Quinlan. She is half fae, half human. And basically, she loves to club, she loves to party, all these things. And then a brutal murder happens in her hometown, and she kind of like doesn't care for like 2 years in a row. And then 2 years later, she is haunting. She's still like a party girl and all this stuff, trying to just put the past behind her. But the murderer attacks again, and an infamous fallen angel Hunt Athalar is assigned to watch her every footstep. And so then, of course, as they're partnering together, probably some sort of romance ensues. The book was fantastic. I loved it so much. It was just great. I loved the romance between the two of them. All of the pinks are like love moments. It was just very good. I love Sarah J. Maas. I haven't started the second one, House of Sky and Breath, yet. I do have it. I just haven't been in the mood to like attack a giant chunker book like this again, though. But this was definitely a favorite. It's the first Sarah J. Maas book that I've read. Besides ACOTAR, I've only read the first one. And so I might actually start the Throne of Glass series soon. I want to finish all her books. I mean, the Queen has her own shelf. So we'll see. The next one is one that I didn't think was going to live up to the hype. And it definitely surpassed all of my expectations for itself. And that was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. When I tell you that this book was adorable, this book was adorable. I just loved it. I mean, everybody was telling me I was gonna love it, and I did love it. So if you don't know what this one is about by now, it's literally about a girl named Olive, and her best friend wants to date her ex, and she's like, well, I'm dating someone, so don't worry about it, and kisses the first guy she sees in the hallway, which happens to be this grumpy sunshine professor named Adam Carlson, and they have to work together to be in a fake relationship to benefit both of them, and of course, probably true love happens along the way. And what I loved about this, I've talked about before, is how Adam is like so protective of her, even when they're not really dating. Like, it was just like, he is the perfect book boyfriend. He is the type of person that I would definitely want to be with if I was like, you know, looking for someone else. Although I love my husband so much. This book was just great. I loved it. It was so cute. They're so cute. I mean, Yeah, and I'm excited to read her 3 novellas that have come out this year, and then her new book that's coming out called Love on the Brain. This is just fantastic. So if you have somehow managed to skip reading this yet, even though it's all over the place, you should take some time to read it because it was spectacular. Then another one that I read in March that has solidified its way onto the top of the top list is In My Dreams, I Hold a Knife by Ashley Winstead, which is actually really funny because I finally saw a bad review for it the other day. My friend Jordaline reads, like, she trashed this book, and I was like, I loved this book so much that I did a reading vlog on Ashley Winstead, and she watched my vlog and responded to me on Instagram and said, say hi to your dog Zelda for me. That has solidified her as a auto-buy author. She is fantastic. She is so kind. She is so sweet. I love her. Anyway, if you also, for some reason, don't know what this book is about by now, it's about a girl named Jessica Miller and how she basically wants to make a big return to her 10-year college reunion, Duquesne University, and be on top of it all. She used to be in a group called I can't remember what they were called. They were called the East Side 7, and then one of them gets murdered in college, and so then after that, one of them gets sent to jail for the murder, but then you find out that that person didn't actually murder them, and so someone has brought them all back together at their 10-year reunion to actually see who murdered their friend Heather. And I loved this. I guessed who it was right before it happened, though, so not too long before. But this was just, the writing was the way that I love. I loved getting to see all the different characters. I loved the flashbacks between 10 years ago and now. I loved getting to have specific chapters that focused on different characters so you could see how they were feeling in that moment. It allowed us to really get to know them a lot better. And the last 3 pages were oh my gosh, what did I just read? Because you thought you knew and then you didn't really know, and then 3 pages and you're like, so yeah, this was fantastic. I loved this book. I'm so glad that it is in my list. And there you have it. And then the number 1 book that, okay, whatever, you're going to have to know that this is my number 1 book of the quarter. I loved it so much. And I don't have it anymore because my mom is borrowing it because I told her to read it ASAP. Although she asked me the other day if it has a happy ending and I said, no, Mom. Anyway, it's The Push by Ashley Audrain. I'll pop it up here. I loved that book. I went into it very scared because I had heard that if you're a mom, you shouldn't read it because it basically makes you think of all the worst fears that you have as a mom. And it made me think of some of the worst fears, but not all the fears that I specifically have. Not all the fears that I specifically have. But basically this book is about a woman named Blythe and how she doesn't necessarily want to be a mom, but she ends up pregnant and she has her daughter Violet and she feels no motherly connection with her. She can't understand why she doesn't feel the way that she does. She thinks her daughter is a little bit different and maybe that's why. A couple years later, she has her son Sam, and she feels that motherly connection and everything she's supposed to have, and then something tragic happens, and it's her dealing with motherhood and life after that. I will say this book very much resembles The Bad Seed, if you've ever watched that movie, or The Good Son, if you've ever read that book. It was fantastic. It had really short chapters. Everything was just flying. I will say I wouldn't call it so much a thriller as I would a psychological trauma, but I can't say much more about it. I just ate it up. I read it so fast. The end was oh my gosh. It was just so good. If you haven't read it yet, I highly recommend it. It was my favorite. I cannot say anything better about this book. It was so good. And I know my mom's not going to like it. I'm interested in seeing what she has to say. But it was so good. Then I already picked 5, but I wanted to share this because I just loved this book, and it's a graphic novel, and it's Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. I figured I had to get on the Alice Oseman train because everyone and their mom is reading this because it's coming out on Netflix soon. This was so cute. It's about Nick and Charlie, and Charlie is this nerdy, geeky little kid, and he sits next to rugby player Nick Nelson in class one morning, and they become friends. But then, of course, Charlie is in love with Nick, and Nick is starting to wonder, am I gay? Because he's starting to feel these feelings for Charlie. It is so cute. The pictures are adorable. Just look at this cuteness. I'm just this is... Yeah, I read this in maybe 30, 40 minutes. I loved this so much. It was fantastic. I need to pick up the other 4 books ASAP because I want to be ready for when Heartless or Heartstopper comes out. I'm also going to be reading Loveless by her soon, which is about this girl that is asexual and doesn't know if something's wrong with her or something. But yeah, this, I cannot talk about this enough. So cute. I loved it. It was great. But I also really enjoyed this. All right, now let's talk about books that I didn't love as much. So the 2 DNFs that I had for this quarter were Where They Found Her by Kimberly McCreight. I was supposed to read it in January for Gabby Reed's Book Troop Club, and I hated it. I'm not going to even explain what it was about. It was awful. I would not recommend. And then the other one was The Killing Moon by N.K. Jemisin. I've heard that that is like her worst series, and I was reading that for Booked and Busy's book club, and I couldn't even get through it. And even the 2 other people that read it with her didn't want to read it, and they all would have DNF'd it had they not had to read it for the book club like video. So it didn't make me feel as bad that I DNF'd that. But those were ones that I definitely didn't like. As far as my least favorites, I only have, actually, I'm only going to say 3, because once you get to 3.5 and up, I would say that I actually really enjoyed those. And so I only have 3 that I'm going to share with you today. Although one is a 3.5, but I didn't love it nearly as much as the other 3.5s, so I'll share it here. My 1 2-star read was The Ghost Bride by Yongzi Chu. And I don't even have that book anymore. I gave it to a little free library, so I will pop up a picture here. But that one was just really weird. It was like about this girl that, honestly, I can't even remember. I think she wanted to like, oh, she was supposed to get married to this guy that's already dead, because they do ghost husbands there, and she didn't want to marry him. And so like she ends up taking this medicine so that she can have him stop haunting her dreams, and she ends up like half dead herself, and so she's trying to get back to her body before she becomes fully dead, but also like trying to escape this family. It started out really interesting, and then it got really boring really fast, and I had no desire in reading it, and I finished it because I was already 70% in and I wanted to know how it ended. It had a terrible ending. I hated it. Would not recommend. I have another book by them on my shelf called The Night Tiger, and I might just get rid of that because I honestly hated this book so much. I'm not sure if their writing is for me, but I always like to give authors a second chance before I just give up on them entirely. So we'll see. Only 2.5-star read was These Silent Woods by Kimmy Cunningham Grant, and I borrowed that from the library, so I don't own it. I will put it up here. And I actually bumped it up an entire half-star because of the ending. I really enjoyed the ending. But this one was just very lackluster for me. It was an extremely slow burn mystery. Like, I wouldn't even call it a thriller, and it labeled itself as a thriller, which is definitely not what it should have been labeled. This one is about a man named Cooper and how he lives with his daughter. I can't remember her name right now. Oh, I think it's Finch. And they live in the woods by themselves, and they never go out to see anybody. And their one friend comes once a year to bring them a crap ton of groceries so that they don't have to go anywhere for the next year. And then he doesn't show up on the day he's supposed to, and so they have to venture out. And there's a reason that they've been hiding in the woods for so long, and you finally find out why towards the end. And that it was a very good book. I will say I did like it, but the reason I gave it 2.5 stars is because it was so slow, and I just feel like not a lot happened until the end. And the ending was very sweet. Like, I liked the ending. I like how everything resolved itself. This was just not a favorite, so unfortunately I have to put it in my least favorites of the month. And then I had 2 3.5 stars. I didn't have any 3 stars, I'm pretty sure. I had 3.5 stars. I had The Paris Apartment and The Lost Apothecary, but I enjoyed The Paris Apartment more than I did The Lost Apothecary, so I'm going to share The Lost Apothecary on here by Sarah Penner. That book was just kind of like lackluster for me. I feel like it was missing something. Like, the story was fun. It's about this girl, Elizabeth, who's like running away from her husband, fiance who cheated on her, and so she goes to London to do that, and she finds this old like potion canister in like the ocean and tries to like figure out who it belongs to. And then you also flash back to like the 1800s to like this lost apothecary woman that would sell potions to women that wanted to kill men that have wronged them. And now she ends up taking on an apprentice, like this little girl that wants to kill her master. You switch perspectives between the Elizabeth girl in modern time, the little apprentice, and the lost apothecary. And I did enjoy the story, and the writing was very beautiful. I just feel like not a lot really happened in this book. Like, there wasn't much that actually really happened, and I didn't really care for the ending, so that's why it's on here. I am glad I read it. Like, I wanted to read it, and it's not like it was a terrible book. It just kind of didn't do anything for me. Like, if you'll notice, like, all these books that I'm reading, aside from Ghost Bride, which I thought was actually bad, like, I didn't think they were bad. They just weren't for me. So that's as far as all of the books that I read that I did not enjoy for this quarter. And I figured I'd end with 5 books that I want to get to in quarter 2, because I think that could be kind of fun. And so one of them is Middle Game by Shauna McGuire, which, no, these are not my tabs. I bought this on Pango Book, and they came pre-tabbed. So I'm definitely going to take them out, because that's kind of annoying. But anyway, about these twins, Roger and Dodger. Roger is skilled with words. Languages come easily to him. Dodger, numbers are her world, her obsession, her everything. She does through the power of math. They're not human, but they're not gods. Not yet. And then there's Reed, which is skilled in the alchemical arts like his progenitor before him. He created Roger and Dodger. He's not their father, but he has a plan to raise them to their highest power, to ascend with them and claim their authority as his own. Godhood is attainable, pray it isn't attained. I've heard nothing but fabulous stuff about this book. It's Mel Reed's favorite book of the year. It's Books and Lala, one of her favorite books ever. I'm very excited to get to it. So I hope I can get to this in May because it's not on the TBR for April. And because I really liked The Final Girl Support Group by Grady Hendrix, I would love to read one of his books that started it all, The Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I know Olivia reads a latte. This is one of her favorites. She's actually rereading it again right now. But this one, Trisha Campbell's life has never felt smaller. Her husband's a workaholic. Her teen kids have their own life. Her senile mother-in-law needs constant care. And she's always a step behind on her endless to-do list. Only thing keeping her sane is her book club, a close-knit group of Charleston women united by their love of true crime. Then James Harris walks into her life during the summer of 1993. He makes her feel things she hasn't felt in years, but when children on the other side of town go missing, she wonders if he's connected. Is he a Brad Pitt, a Bundy, or something much worse? It has vampires in the title, like a book club in the title. This has got to be good. You know? And I don't know why I want to read this. I just want to read this because I've heard it's really weird, and that is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. It's my least rated book on Goodreads right now. It has the worst ratings, but you know what? I want to find out for myself whether I'm going to love it or hate it. And this one, it says, Catherine House is a school of higher learning like no other. This crucible of reformist liberal art study has produced some of the world's best minds, artists, and inventors. Students are required to give Catherine 3 years, summers included, completely removed from the outside world. In return, the school promises its graduates a future of sublime power and that they can become anything or anyone they desire. Among this year's incoming class is Ines, who expects to trade her blurry teenage nights of parties and dangerous men for rigorous intellectual discipline. But for her, the house is the closest thing to a home she's ever had. But its strange protocols soon make this refuge feel like a lavish prison. And when tragedy strikes, she begins to suspect that the school might be hiding a dangerous agenda. Anyway, it has deckled edges, which I love. I will say, people really hate this book or they really love this book. And so, you know, I'm ready to, give my own opinion on it. I'm excited. Because everyone and their mother is reading this, and I have to know for myself whether I'm going to enjoy it or not. I want to get to the From Blood and Ash series by Jennifer L. Armentrout. I have the first 2 books. I am ready to finally read these for myself. This one is about Poppy. Her life has never been her own. The life of the maiden is solitary, never to be touched, looked upon, spoken to, experienced pleasure. Waiting for the day of her ascension, she'd rather be with the guards, fighting back the evil that took her family than preparing to be found worthy by the gods, but the choice has never been hers. The entire kingdom rests on her shoulders. She has a heart, a soul, and a longing. When Hawk, a golden-eyed guard honor-bound to ensure her ascension, enters her life, destiny and duty become tangled with desire and need. And then it says, a fallen kingdom is rising once more, determined to take back what they believe is theirs through violence and vengeance. As the shadow of those cursed draws closer, the line between what's forbidden and what is right becomes blurred. Poppy is not only on the verge of losing her heart and being found unworthy by the gods, but also her life when every blood-soaked thread that holds her world together begins to unravel. Put it on the back by Sarah J. Maas, so it's gotta be good. Right. I don't know. I'm a little scared to read it, not gonna lie. Am I gonna love it? Am I gonna hate it? I don't know. It's like 500 pages, but we'll give it a chance. Last one, because I've been wanting to read this for a while, and I want to know whether this book is for me or not. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. I've been wanting to read this for a hot minute. If you don't know what this one is about by now, it's about a girl named Adeline that basically makes a deal with the devil, being able to live forever, but as a result, anytime someone meets her, if they turn away from her, they forget her completely, don't even remember her. And then, of course, life changes when she stumbles into a hidden bookstore and someone can remember her name 300 years later and something sinister happens. People either say that this book is the best thing they've ever read or one of the worst things they've ever read. And so I'm ready to determine whether I'm going to think it's one of the worst I've ever read. I think it's going to be great. It's on a 5-star prediction for me, so we'll definitely see. These are the 5 that I hope that I get to super soon. So with that, I hope you enjoyed this quarterly stats and favorites wrap up. I hope that maybe you got some books on your radar that you should definitely check out and some books that maybe you shouldn't check out. But if you've read any of the ones that I said I wanted to read, I would love to know your comments down below whether or not I should get to them in quarter 2 or not so much. But I want to know what your favorite of quarter 1 was, what your least favorite was, if you want to share that with me. And I love you all, and hopefully by the time you see me again, I will not be sick. We will see. All right, guys. See you in another video. Bye. Hey.